Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we're doing the top 10 Marvel Legends for 2024. And I know what you're thinking, how did you come up with that many? And I'll tell you, it actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Very strange. I feel like they released fewer figures this year, or maybe I bought fewer of them, I don't know. And there were a lot of real stinkers on my list. But I actually didn't have too much trouble picking these out. The good ones kind of stood out this year. So hey, this might be a more fun list than I expected, and I actually really enjoy a few of these figures, so I'm gonna enjoy making this. Who'da thunk it? Anyway, this list could have other characters, other figures on it. You might have different picks. You might not like any of mine at all. Feel free to tell me in the comment section below, and we'll talk. We'll say, hey, maybe mine's no good, maybe your list is way better. I mean, it's kind of subjective, so probably not, but who knows? You might think that, so let's talk down there. But this is going to be my top 10 list, and actually we have an honorable mention of the best Marvel Legends for 2024. Alright guys, we're going to get things started with an honorable mention. We're going to start with the Black Winter Thor. Now I know this figure has a few issues, and some people don't like that the hair is always up the way it is, but it's actually a pretty strong release from a technical standpoint. It looks pretty much like the source material it's coming from, and they executed pretty well. It's not the most impressive figure ever. I don't think any of these figures are, so we need to kind of get that set aside. But what this figure is trying to be, it does pretty well. It's perfectly fine, and it's going to look nice on the shelf compared to most Marvel Legends. It's going to look pretty darn good, so I figured we might as well throw it on the list. Alright guys, coming in at number 10, we have the 97 Nightcrawler. Now I actually think this is a better overall Nightcrawler than the release that we saw not that long ago, and I don't care about the pinless joints or anything like that, though sure, that's a nice benefit if they execute it well. But this one does have a nice sculpt, and it poses pretty well, and the heads are actually executed very, very nicely. I'm not going to judge it for having a goofy hairstyle, that's just the source material, but Hasbro did a really good job with this. There are a few parts on this figure that don't pose as well as I would like, and he doesn't have a bendy tail. You know, there's stuff that could be improved, but in terms of trying to be a 97 Nightcrawler, I think this is a perfectly acceptable release. And I'm happy to add it to my collection. And I think it would be fine for people who are trying to add it in as a standard Nightcrawler if you can get past the hair. Coming in at number 9, we have, I'm guessing it's a figure most people would put higher on the list, but it's the Scarlet Spider, and there are a few key reasons I don't have it higher on the list. I do think it is a really good release for Hasbro, and it is in some ways a contender for this character across any line. Sure, we have Mafex and other ones that look pretty good and do things well and things poorly. This one is the same way. It does some things really well. It does manage to capture the character nicely. It does have some issues with the low skinny shoulders and things like that as well. The overlay jacket, questionable, but generally it's a really good release, and coming from Hasbro, we don't get many of those, so we kind of have to take them where we can. And I think for Spider-Man collectors, this is a good pickup. It's not the best pickup ever, but if you're into Scarlet Spider, you might want to grab it and enjoy it for what it is, and if you put some time into posing it, it's going to look pretty darn good. Okay, coming in at number 8, we have the 2-pack Psylock, which I didn't want as a character at all. Like, I could not care less about it, but I think Hasbro put more effort into this than they really even needed to. I don't know how many people wanted this. Maybe no one, maybe everyone outside of me. Don't know. But it's one of their stronger releases. It has some nice new sculpt work. It has some decent paint, some decent features that we don't normally see, and I think it's a good way to look at how Marvel Legends should be. We shouldn't have a majority of duds from any line ever. They need to figure out what they're trying to do, and if their only goal is to fill out rosters, that's not enough. We need good products, at least good enough products, and I think this is it. In fact, it's better because it has the new sculpt and some nice paintwork here and there. It's a standout, I wanted to say a standout of mediocrity, which it kind of is because that's what Marvel Legends are aiming to be. They've said as much. But this one does stand out because they put just that little bit of effort that makes it look better than 90% of the rest of the stuff they release. Alrighty, coming in at number 7, just like number 8, we have a 2-pack figure of Leandra. And Leandra? I always had Leandra as a kid. I wonder how you should pronounce it. Anyway, it's another 2-pack, and it seems like this whole Wolverine 2-pack thing was a way to release figures that people wanted, or maybe wanted, with Wolverines that people didn't want. Is that what you guys, let me know, did you experience the same thing? Was it always the second figure that was better? Seems like it might have been, based on my poor memory. Anyway, this figure, it's not like the most impressive thing in the world, but it does give us a character a lot of people wanted that is executed perfectly, adequately. It's not going to blow anybody away. It's not going to be the most impressive thing in the world, but it will fill that role of having that character on the shelf and not doing a bad job of it. It'll look good enough, and it's a little bit better than average for Hasbro Marvel Legends because most of them don't. Coming in at number 6, we have the deluxe release of Odin. Maybe one of the least posable figures Hasbro's ever released. However, it is one of the best looking figures they have done. They did a lot of various molded plastics and a good spread of paint and a really nice overall silhouette and look for the character. Yeah, there's a few wonky things like the hair tucking under the cape and whatnot, and like I said, it's very hard to pose this guy in any way. He's just a big old brick, but he looks so damn good for a Hasbro Marvel Legends figure, it's kind of amazing. There's so much more going on with this one release that it's going to make the rest of the figures around it look not as good, which is kind of a problem with Hasbro. I think they need to find a different way of doing this, because having some really good figures and mostly bad ones, it makes for kind of an unpleasant collection. Now, this guy was greatly overpriced, and that's why he's not higher on the list, but it's still a really nice looking figure, and if it had a little bit more paint, or dare I say even a custom paint job, it would be a high-end collectible. I mean, relatively, let's not get crazy here, it's still PVC with basic joints, but you know what I mean. It's a nice looking figure, good sculpt, good composition. It really has everything going for it for a Hasbro product. I'm very pleased with it, it's just that that darn price point was too high. Alright guys, coming in at number 5, I had to mix in Power Princess, and on paper it is in no way a special or impressive release. It's just a basic lady. That's basically it. There's not a whole lot going on here, but that's what's so important about it, is it doesn't take much to make a decent figure. It's sculpted well and painted well, and it articulates well enough. That's really all you have to do, Hasbro. All you have to do is not screw things up, and this is such a simple design that you executed it well, and it's on the top 10 list. It's so easy. They gave her a really good sculpt. The paints that are there are great. The face looks nice. It doesn't have some creepy, just over-realistic look to it that it doesn't need. It looks like a comic character that's executed well in the 3D, and that's all it takes. And I don't think anybody would disagree that this is at least up there as one of their best looking female figures, if not the number 1 spot. I mean, it was hard to find from the beginning because people wanted to buy it so much. And what is it, like 99% of all Wonder Woman customs come from this body? It's just so simple that they could execute like this on a simple design and make such a good figure that people will be happy with it. They just need to do this more often. This is a perfect example of how Hasbro can make the line so much better without it being some extravagant thing. Coming in at number 4, we have the Superior Spider-Man, and this is another one of those examples where it's like they didn't do that much to make it better. And yes, he's a little bit more expensive than he should be, and the spider legs don't work as well as I'd like, but it doesn't take that much for them to do a good figure. He's got a different body shape that makes him look like a comic character, and that is absolutely essential for making figures of comic characters. They should look like that. It should be really straightforward. His shoulders aren't low and saggy and weird looking. He doesn't look like a sock filled with potatoes. He looks like a comic character. The shoulders are bigger, higher up. He has that V shape. He looks like he's supposed to. And what little paint that is on there, it looks good. It's not some extravagant thing, just like the previous number. It's not anything special, but it doesn't have to be. You can make a perfectly acceptable figure at $26 and make people happy. And this is a perfect example of that. Now, granted, he'd cost more because of the legs, but I'm just talking the core figure. It doesn't take that much, and this is another perfect example of that. Coming in at number 3, we have Cable, probably their best release from the waist up in a very, very long time. It is such a good sculpt, good combination of parts, good execution, very pleased with it. It's not higher up on the list, and it is still pretty high on the list to be fair, but it's not higher up on the list because they totally dropped the ball on the lower half. Those legs are jacked up. They're so screwed up it makes the figure look goofy. But stick him on the back of the shelf or pose him so that you can't see his legs and he looks excellent. It's a great addition to a Marvel vs. Capcom collection. It's a great addition to just an X-Men collection. It's just so weird to me that they made such an excellent release and then also such a terrible one at the same time. Like, his bottom half could easily be on the worst 10 list, but then the top half, if it was by itself, might be number 1 for the best. Oh, Hasbro. Oh boy. Coming in at number 2, it's somewhat debatable, I suppose, but I'm going to go ahead and put Wolverine. Now, when this guy was first shown, I thought he looks kind of weird. His arms are huge, his legs are small, there's some questionable things, and when he came out, like, those things are still kind of true, but he actually is much better in hand, and there's a lot to really like about this. The new sculpt work, it poses pretty well, except for a few things that don't pose well at all, so it's kind of unfortunate because they cheaped out when they could. But outside of those few issues, this is exactly how Marvel Legends should be released all the time. This is a very well executed figure for the price point. Again, except for those few things where they cheaped out to save 3 cents. No boot swivel, things like that. Like, don't cheap out, Hasbro. Sell more of them at a reasonable price with lower profit margins and you'll make more money. But this is still a really, really, really good figure. Arguably the best Wolverine Hasbro has released. I might personally prefer a different one, but that wasn't from this year. For this year, by far the best Wolverine and easily one of the best Marvel Legends. And finally, coming in at number 1, I'm throwing a lot of bias on this one, a lot of personal feelings toward this one. It is the Sabertooth from the Wolverine 2-pack. Now, the reason I'm putting this guy at number 1, part of it is bias because I've wanted a nice Sabertooth figure since the beginning of Marvel Legends, honestly, and this is finally it. It's not perfect, but it is so much better than every previous version and so indicative of how easily Hasbro could make their figures more comic accurate that it had to be number 1. I'm doing it on principle. It looks like a comic character. It has the muscle groups bulging where they're supposed to bulge and tapering where they're supposed to taper, and he's got the skinny ankles and pinched in knee. It looks like he's supposed to look. He doesn't have tubular legs. He doesn't have tubular arms. Yeah, he has that weird Omega Red issue around the shoulders, but they hit it well with the fur, and it still has that nice broad chest and wide shoulders and narrow waist, and it looks like a freaking comic character, and that's what they need to do. If every figure was as technically average as this, but with the right shapes, they'd sell 10 times more figures. They wouldn't be an Ollie's exclusive brand. I don't understand how anybody buys this and loves it so much, but then still justifies all of the potato sack characters and figures that they release otherwise. It doesn't cost more to shape the figures correctly. Every time there's a new sculpt, it should be shaped correctly. They shouldn't keep this style of saggy cosplay people for all their comic characters. It shouldn't be that this one really technically average figure stands out in the collection. But that's the case. That's the case, unfortunately, that we have with Hasbro. This one is an excellent, perfect example of how easy it is, and I've said this a bunch now, but this one is the most perfect example of how easily Hasbro could make their line so much better in like the flip of a switch. Every new sculpt, just sculpt it better. That's it. That's it. And like I said, this guy's an excellent release. If you need a Sabertooth, this is by far easily the one to go with. Alrighty guys, that's it. That's the end of my top 10 list of Marvel Legends for the year of 2024. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I actually think most of these are pretty solid releases for Hasbro, and if they did more stuff like this, it'd be a much, much more enjoyable and desirable line for more collectors. Like, I would love nothing more than for every release to just be an absolute awesome figure. I want Marvel Legends to be great. It's not my fault they're not, and I have to be the bearer of bad news. I get so much hate for that. It's not my fault, it's theirs. Blame them. In fact, let's go ahead and blame them. We're going to do a top 10 worst Marvel Legends of the year, and that'll be coming up very soon. So make sure you stick around for that one, guys, but thanks for watching this one, and if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos every single day, except for maybe around the new year I might take a little break. But in the case that I do take that break, I do have thousands of videos already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.